At the head of this society were Vahdettin, who bore the title of the Ottoman Sultan and Caliph, Damat Ferit Pasha, Ali Kemal, Minister of the Interior Adil Bey, Mehmet Ali Bey and Said Molla. Certain English adventurers, for instance a clergyman named Freve, also belonged to this society. Their correspondence and operation make it clear that clergyman Freve was their chairman. The society had a double face and twofold character. On the one hand, it openly sought the protection of England by methods inspired by civilization. On the other, it worked in secret and showed that its real aim was to incite the people to revolt by forming organization in the interior, to paralyze the national conscience and encourage foreign countries to interfere. These were the treacherous designs underlying the work of the secret section of the society. We shall see later how Said Molla played just as active a part, or even a still more important one, in the secret work as in the public enterprises of the society. What I have just said about this society will become much clearer to you when I enter to further particulars later on and lay before you certain documents which will astonish you. Certain prominent personalities, amongst them some women, in Istanbul were convinced that the real salvation of the country lay in securing an American protectorate over it. They stubbornly persisted in this idea and tried to prove that acceptance of their point of view was the only thing possible. About this, I shall also have a great deal more to say at the proper time, so that you may clearly appreciate the general situation. I would like to point out exactly where and in what condition the military units were at the time of which I am speaking. Two army inspection had been established on principle in Anatolia. Immediately after the conclusion of the armistice, the regular soldiers at the front were disbanded, deprived of their arms and ammunition. The army consisted only of units having no fighting value. The distribution of the troops under the Second Army inspection, with its headquarters at Konya, was as follows. The 12th Army Corps, with its staff at Konya, consisted of one division, the 41st at Konya, and another, the 23rd at Afyonkarahisar. To this army corps was attached the 57th Division, stationed at Denizli, belonging to the 70th Army Corps, which had been captured at Izmir. The 20th Corps and its staff was stationed at Ankara. One of its divisions, the 24th, in Ankara itself, and the other, the 11th, at Niğde. The 1st Division, stationed at Izmir, was attached to the 25th Army Corps, which also included the 10th Caucasian Division. The 61st and 56th Divisions were quartered in the district of Balıkesir and Bursa and formed the 14th Army Corps, with headquarters at Bandırma, and directly under the command of Istanbul. The late Yusuf İsset Pasha commanded this army corps until the National Assembly was opened. I was myself at the head of the 3rd inspection when I landed with my staff at Samsun. I was to have had 2 army corps under my personal command. One of them, the 3rd, had its base at Sivas and was commanded by Colonel Refet Bey, who came with me to Samsun. One division of this corps, the 5th Caucasian, was at Amasya, the other, the 15th, was at Samsun. The 2nd Army Corps under my command was the 15th stationed at Erzurum and commanded by Kazım Karabekir Pasha. One of his division, the 9th, commanded by Ruhi Bey, was in garrison at Erzurum. The other, under the command of Colonel Halit Bey, was at Trabzon. After Halil Bey had been called to Istanbul, he abandoned his command and hid himself at Bayburt. Another man took command temporarily of the division. One of two remaining divisions of the army corps, the 12th, was near Hasankale on the eastern frontier, and the 11th was at Beyazıt. The 12th Army Corps consisted of two divisions stationed in the district of Diyarbakır and was independent, as it was directly under Istanbul. One of its division, the 2nd, was at Siirt, while the other, the 5th, was at Mardin. These two army corps were directly under my command, and I was also authorized to give orders to other troops lying within the district of my inspection, in all the vilayets comprised within it and in the neighboring provinces. In virtue of the authority vested in me, I had the right to enter into communication and correspondence with the 20th Army Corps at Ankara, with its superior army inspection, as well as with the Army Corps at Diyarbakır and the heads of the civil administration in nearly the whole of the Anadolu. You might perhaps be inclined to ask why those who sent me to Anadolu with the idea of banishing me from Istanbul entrusted me with such wide powers. The answer is that they did not know themselves what they were doing. They invented me the pretext that it was necessary for me to go to Samsun to report on the spot on the unsettled condition of the district and to take the necessary measures to deal with it. I had pointed out that in order to do this I should be given special authority and special powers. There did not seem to be any objection to this. I discussed the question with men who were on the general staff at that time and who a certain extent guessed my intentions. These were the persons who conceived the idea of my taking up the position, and I dictated the order giving me full powers. Apparently Shakir Pasha, the Minister of War, after reading them, hesitated to sign them, and his seal that was attached to the document was scarcely recognizable. Let us return to a closer examination of the facts, so that we may rapidly review them as a whole. Morally and materially, the enemy powers were openly attacking the Ottoman Empire and the country itself. They were determined to disintegrate and annihilate both. The Padishah Caliph had one sole anxiety, namely to save his own life and comfort. The members of the government had the same feeling. Without being aware of it, the nation had no longer anyone to lead it, but lived in darkness and uncertainty, waiting to see what would happen. Those who began to understand clearly the terrors and extent of the catastrophe were seeking some means whereby to save the country, each guided by the circumstances that surrounded him and the sentiments that inspired him. The army existed merely in name. The commanders and other officers were still suffering from the exhaustion resulting from the war. Their hearts were bleeding on account of the threatened dismemberment of their country, standing on the brink of the dark abyss which yawned before their eyes. They racked their brains to discover a way out of the danger. Here I must add and explain a very important point. The nation and the army had no suspicion at all of the Padishah, treasury, On the contrary, on account of religious and traditional ties handed down for the centuries, they remained loyal to the throne and its occupant, seeking for means of salvation under the influence of this tradition. The security of the caliphate and the sultan concerned them far more than their own safety. That the country could possibly be saved without a caliph and without a padishah was an idea too impossible for them to comprehend, and to those who ventured to think otherwise, they would immediately have been looked down upon as men without faith and without patriotism, and such as would have been scorned. I must mention another point here. In seeking ways to save the situation, it was considered to be especially important to avoid irritating the great powers, England, France and Italy. The idea that it was impossible to fight even one of these powers had taken root in the mind of nearly everybody. Consequently, to think of doing so and thus bring on another war after the Ottoman Empire, all-powerful Germany and Austria-Hungary together had been defeated and crushed would have been looked upon as sheer madness. Not only the mass of the people thought in this strain, but those also who must be regarded as their chosen leaders shared the same opinion. Therefore, in seeking a way out of the difficulty, two questions had to be eliminated from discussion. First of all, no hostility was to be shown towards the Entente powers. Secondly, the most important thing of all was to remain heart and soul loyal to the Padishah. Now, gentlemen, I will ask you that decision could have been arrived at under such circumstances for salvation. As I have already explained, there were three propositions that had been put forward. First, to demand protection from England. Second, to accept the United States of America as a mandatory power. The originators of these two proposals had as their aim the preservation of the Ottoman Empire in its complete integrity and preferred to place it as a whole under the protection of a single power, rather than allow it to be divided among several states. Third, the third proposal was to deliver the country by allowing each district to act in its own way and according to its own capability. Thus, for instance, certain districts in opposition to the theory of separation endeavored to remain an integral part of the empire. Others holding a different opinion already appeared to regard the dismemberment of the empire as an accomplished fact and sought only their own safety. My above explanations are inclusive of the leading motives of these three kinds of propositions. I did not think any of these three proposals could be accepted as sagacious, because of the arguments and considerations on which they were based were groundless. In reality, the foundations of the Ottoman Empire were themselves shattered at that time. Its existence was threatened with extermination. All the Ottoman districts were practically dismembered. Only the fatherland, affording protection to a mere handful of Turks, still remains, and it was now suggested also to divide this. Such expressions as the Ottoman Empire, independence, Padishah Caliph government, all of them were mere meaningless words. Whose existences was it essential to save? And with whose help and how? Therefore, what could be a serious and correct resolution? In these circumstances, one resolution alone was possible, namely to create a new Turkish state, to sovereignty and independence of which would be unreservedly recognized. This was the resolution we adopted before we left Istanbul and which we began to put into execution immediately after we set foot on Anadolu soil at Samsun. These were the most logical and most powerful arguments in support of this resolution. The main point was that the Turkish nation should live in honor and dignity. Such a condition could only be attained by complete independence, no matter how wealthy and prosperous a nation is. If it is deprived of its independence, it no longer deserves to be regarded otherwise than as a slave in the eyes of civilized world. To accept the protectorate of a foreign power is to admit lack of all human qualities, weakness and incapacity. Indeed, it is impossible to envisage people who have not been humiliated willingly accept a foreign master. But the Turks is both dignified and proud. He is also capable and talented. Such a nation would prefer to perish rather than subject itself to the life of a slave. Therefore, independence or death. This was the rallying cry of all those who honestly desire to save their country. Let us suppose for a moment that, trying to accomplish this, we had failed. What would have been the result? Why slavery? In that case, would not the consequence have been the same if we had submitted to other proposals? Undoubtedly it would, but with its difference that a nation that defies death in its struggle for independence drives comfort from the thought that it had resolved to make every sacrifice compatible with human dignity. There is no doubt whatever that, in the eyes of both friend and foe traggots, the world its position is more respected than would be that of a craven and degraded nation capable of surrendering itself to the yoke of slavery. Moreover, to labor for the maintenance of the Ottoman dynasty and its sovereign would have been to inflict the greatest harm upon the Turkish nations. For if its independence could have been secured at the price of every possible sacrifice, it could not have been regarded as secure so long as the Sultan existed. How could it be deemed permissible that a crowd of madmen, united by neither a moral nor a spiritual bond to the country or the nation as a whole, could still be trusted to protect the independence and dignity of the nation and the state? As for the caliphate, it could only have been a laughing stock in the eyes of the civilized world, enjoying the blessings of science. As you see, in order to carry out our resolution, questions had to be dealt with about which the nation had hitherto now practically nothing. It was imperative that questions which were considered dangerous to discuss publicly be discussed openly. We were compelled to rebel against the Ottoman government, against the Padishah, against the Caliph of all the Mohammedans. And we had to bring the whole nation and the army into a state of rebellion. It was essential that the entire nation take up arms against whoever would venture to attack the fatherland of Turks and Turkish independence. It would undoubtedly have been of legal advantage if we had made clear to public at very beginning all the implications of a resolution of such far-reaching importance.